Minister Dr. Cynthia Marie Whitley, but I'm not your conventional minister. The name of this podcast is Be Aware. Be aware of your thoughts. Each week, we will review self-realization tips using primarily biblical references through storytelling. We will reflect on our thoughts and become aware. Shalom. Today I share my diet. It is not so that you can follow my diet. It is so that we can review a Bible verse of how God's healing can be simple. One day I was sitting in Barnes & Noble's journaling. Sitting in Barnes & Noble's is like playing musical chairs because they have an unusually small amount of chairs for such a large establishment. But this day I'd found the prime seat. A nice gentleman sat next to me and greeted me very politely. I could barely understand him because of his accent, but his smile and mannerism conveyed his sincerity. As I looked up from my writing, a book was staring me in the face titled Cleanse to Heal by Anthony Williams. It was like our eyes met. It had a delicious, juicy red watermelon on the cover with black seeds, not white. I remembered them as a child being black. I must have been about 10 to 15 feet away. If the book was a person, it would have said, "Come get me off this shelf." I smiled because that's how God answers my prayers. I'm 30 miles away from home and something says, go to Barnes & Noble's and relax. I have a deep yearning to heal naturally. So seeing the book seemed like an answer to my prayer. At home, I have a shelf full of vitamins and herb teas, more than I can even take before they expire. In fact, it was becoming confusing which one to take on which date. Was there another natural cure I did not know of? I was thinking about giving up on natural herbs. My blood pressure, cholesterol levels, and weight weren't budging no matter how much I tried. Back to the book. It was as if I was having a conversation with the book. I said, "I see you. I'll pick you up before I go." I looked at the book several times, kept glancing at it, but I wasn't ready to get up from my chair. I love living and my body was asking to be healed for some time now. I feel an innate desire for perfect health, so it was like God sat me in that seat for the purpose of healing me, finding a natural cure. Eventually, I got out of my seat and left my writing books on the chair so that no one would take my seat. I caressed the book knowing that it was to be a treasure. It was as if I found a large sum of money. The feeling before I opened the book was the feeling I get when I'm about to have a great discourse with the author and his or her content. The author and I were going to enter into a great relationship. When I choose a book from a shelf, I need only to turn to one page, read a few words, and know instantly whether it will be a tool that will help me evolve or not. Let me preface this by saying I am not endorsing a product or a diet. I'm simply speaking of the spiritual path of my healing journey. Within the book, I found something called the celery diet. I never heard of this before, but it agreed with my spirit. So I began the celery diet and have been on it for at least 1 month and a half. For the most part, I am feeling fine. Where I was having stomach pain periodically, that has disappeared. But as with all cleansing diets I've tried, like the lemonade diet, there's a process of releasing toxins that don't feel very well. Both remedies is like natural diuretics. That's when I need strength to complete the diet. First, my thoughts were, how could something as plain as celery juice heal my body. I've often wondered why are fruits and vegetables available in such abundance? Who could possibly eat as many apples, celeries, carrots, and all type of fruit as is sold in the supermarket, fruit and green vegetables? Well, my prayer was answered because for over 45 days, I have been buying and juicing 2 bunches of celery every morning, missing maybe 4 days scattered throughout. The miracle is that I've released stubborn weight that wouldn't budge, and my blood pressure has decreased from 156/80 to 135/79. In reference to the abundance of fruit, first I'm reminded of the biblical verse in the Garden of Eden. Genesis 2:29 says, "And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree, which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat," which is the edible part of anything, as a fruit or nut, according to dictionary.com. Even though I was seeing results, I still wondered, can an herb as simple as celery be this effective? Should I continue this diet because it takes a lot of effort to cut and juice every single day? This then had me recall the biblical story of Elijah and Naaman as a faith tool to continue my regimen of something as simple as celery juice. 2 Kings 5 tells the story of Naaman and the prophet Elijah. Israel was under the control of the Arameans or Syrians. There was a prestigious Aramean who was a high military officer who had, up until then, an uncurable illness called leprosy. The king of Aramean sent a lot of money and ordered his bondservants to ask the king of Israel to do the impossible, which was to cure Naaman of leprosy. They had been given information that there was a prophet in Israel that could cure him. They thought money was the answer, and that a cure would surely be found because of their riches. Elisha, a prophet of the Lord, after learning of his king's fear of such a request, asked that the king steer Naaman towards him. Naaman was expecting a huge display of medical treatment that would cure him. Upon reaching Elijah, Elisha never gave him an audience, but sent word for him to wash himself in the Jordan by immersing himself 7 times. Naaman did not receive the diagnosis lightly and was actually offended. Was he to watch in such muddy, dirty water that was found in the Jordan River? There were cleaner rivers. Naaman must have reached the end of his rope. Was he to just wash himself? He must have felt helpless and at the mercy of anything for a cure. So, because it didn't take much coercion from his soldiers to convince him to try this simple cure. Just wash yourself 7 times and you will be cured. Naaman complied and immediately experiences complete healing. So the lesson is clear for me. The antidote for me to have faith that the proper use of this simple herb celery is a healing tool for me. I have found that it works for me. I will stick to it because I believe that this is the food talked about in Genesis. I will continue at times with my other herbs and vitamins, but most of all, I will believe in God's power to heal, as Exodus 23:25 says. Worship the Lord your God, and his blessings will be on your food and water. I will take away from you sickness. Shalom. If you can't wait until next week's story, visit Looking for Self series on Amazon.com under Gershona Cynthia Whitley.